Imagine walking into a golf club and being told the initiation fee is $1 million. Not $1 million to buy a house on the course. Not $1 million for some lifetime package. And definitely not $1 million to own part of the club. $1 million just for the privilege of becoming a member. And even after paying it, you're still not done. This isn't Augusta National. It isn't Pine Valley. And it isn't some 100-year-old club with decades of history behind it. It's a golf course in South Florida that only opened in 2023. It's called Shell Bay. And when it opened, the price to join made headlines across the golf world. A $1 million initiation fee. But somehow, that's not even the craziest part. Because since then, reports have put the initiation fee even higher, around $1.35 million. So what could possibly make a golf club worth that much money? And who looks at a $1 million golf membership and says, yeah, that sounds worth it? Because once you look inside Shell Bay, you realize they're not really selling golf. They're selling something much harder to get. Shell Bay sits in Hallandale Beach, Florida, just north of Miami. And that location is important. South Florida has no shortage of golfers. It has wealthy residents, celebrities, professional athletes, executives, people who spend part of the year there specifically because they can play golf while much of the country is freezing. What South Florida doesn't have is an unlimited supply of land, especially land where someone can just decide to build a brand new private golf club. Miami has been developed for decades. The coastline is packed. Real estate is insanely valuable. And when the project was being built, no new private golf course had opened in the Miami area in roughly 25 years. That's the first clue as to how a golf membership gets anywhere near $1 million. You don't just need rich golfers. You need rich golfers competing for something that barely exists. So Shell Bay's developers didn't try to build another normal country club. They went in the complete opposite direction. They took roughly 150 acres and created an entire private luxury world around golf. And for the course itself, they brought in one of the biggest names in the sport, Greg Norman. Norman has designed courses all over the world, but Shell Bay was supposed to feel different. The championship course stretches more than 7,200 yards and was designed as a secluded, walkable golf experience. Sweeping bunkers, contoured greens, perfectly maintained fairways. The whole course is designed to feel isolated from everything around it, which is kind of absurd when you remember where you are. You're not in rural Montana. You're in South Florida, one of the busiest metropolitan areas in the country. But once you get through the gates, the goal is to make all of that disappear. Here's one detail that tells you almost everything you need to know about the place. Shell Bay doesn't have tee times. Think about the last time you played a normal public golf course. You went online, found an opening, booked 9:20, arrived early, waited for the group ahead of you, waited again on the second hole, and maybe by hole 6 you're sitting in your cart watching 3 groups stack up on a par 3. At Shell Bay, that's exactly the experience they're trying to eliminate. Guests simply check in when they arrive, and caddies are mandatory. So if you're the kind of person who can afford a 7-figure initiation fee, the idea is simple. You don't organize your day around the golf course. The golf course organizes itself around you. That's when the $1 million price starts to make a little more sense. Not normal person sense, billionaire sense. Because for someone at that level, the most valuable thing in their life might not be money, it might be time. Here's where Shell Bay gets ridiculous. Because if all you got for that initiation fee was 18 holes of golf, even wealthy golfers would probably have some questions. So the golf course is really only the centerpiece. There's also a 12-acre practice facility, a 9-hole par 3 course, a roughly 20,000 square foot clubhouse, and a world-class caddy program. Then you move beyond golf entirely. There's a private yacht club, and not just a dock with a couple of boats, a marina with 48 slips and access toward the Atlantic Ocean. Tennis, pickleball, padel, basketball facilities, batting cages, bowling, billiards, fine dining, a spa, and a residential component overlooking the property. Basically, imagine someone took an elite country club, a luxury resort, a marina, and an adult playground, and put all of them behind the same gate. The development includes a 20-story residential tower with more than 100 condos and penthouses overlooking the course. Early reported pricing stretched into the millions of dollars, with penthouses starting around $11 million. But here's the hilarious part. Buying one of those residences doesn't necessarily mean you automatically get the golf. Residents receive a social membership, but golf requires an additional membership fee. Imagine spending millions of dollars on a condo overlooking a golf course, then looking out your window every morning at golfers below, and realizing you still have to pay separately to join them. That's how exclusive this place is trying to be. But there's a reason developers thought this could actually work, and it has less to do with golf than you'd think. Over the last several years, South Florida has experienced something of a luxury golf arms race. Wealthy residents moved into the region. Demand for private golf increased, but you can't just magically create more elite golf clubs, especially in places like Miami and Palm Beach, where undeveloped land can be incredibly valuable. That creates a simple economic problem. Lots of rich people want private golf, and there aren't enough memberships for all of them. So prices go up, and up and up. By the time Shell Bay arrived, the developers weren't competing against the local $80 public course. They were competing for people who were already comfortable spending hundreds of thousands of dollars on private clubs. At that point, a bizarre thing happens. The enormous price can actually become part of the appeal, because $1 million initiation fee doesn't just raise money, it creates a filter. And that's where we get to what Shell Bay is really selling. Imagine two golf courses. Both have perfect greens, incredible practice facilities, great food, beautiful clubhouses. One costs $10,000 to join. The other costs $1 million. Obviously, the second course isn't 100 times better at golf. The greens aren't 100 times smoother. Your drive doesn't suddenly go 320 yards. Your 6-foot putts don't start dropping automatically. So where does the extra money go? Part of the answer is exclusivity. If virtually anyone can walk in, it isn't exclusive. If only a tiny percentage of people can afford to walk in, now you've created something scarce, and wealthy people have always paid enormous amounts for scarcity. A $100,000 watch doesn't tell time 1,000 times better than a $100 watch. A supercar doesn't get you to the grocery store 50 times faster than a Toyota. A private jet still lands at the same destination as a commercial plane. The difference is the experience, the convenience, the status, and the access. Golf clubs work the same way, except they have one additional advantage: the other members. Imagine you're the CEO of a major company. Normally, getting 4 uninterrupted hours with another CEO would be almost impossible. Their assistant talks to your assistant. Calendars get checked. Meetings get moved. Eventually, maybe you get 30 minutes. But put both of you on a golf course? Now you have 4 hours together. You hit a drive, you walk, you talk, you hit another shot. You talk some more, you grab something to eat afterward, and before you know it, you've spent half a day together. Golf is almost perfectly designed for building relationships. You're doing something, but you're not doing so much that you can't talk. At a normal club, that's nice. At an ultra-exclusive club filled with wealthy entrepreneurs, executives, investors, celebrities, and athletes, that can be incredibly valuable. Suddenly, your initiation fee isn't just buying access to a golf course, it's buying access to a network. And this is where the economics become strange. Because what is one relationship actually worth? If you're running $1 billion business, meeting the right investor could potentially be worth far more than your membership. One business deal could dwarf the cost. One connection could change your company. Nobody can guarantee that's going to happen, but that's not really the point. The point is that the people behind the gate become part of what makes the gate valuable. And the harder the gate is to get through, the more valuable the people on the other side can seem. But Shell Bay still isn't the most extreme example of this. There's another golf club that demonstrates what happens when even $1 million isn't enough. Augusta National, home of the Masters. Probably the most famous private golf club in America. And Augusta proves something fascinating about exclusivity. At some point, price stops mattering. There are plenty of people who could afford $1 million golf membership. Billionaires, professional athletes, CEOs, celebrities. But having enough money doesn't mean you can simply call Augusta National and ask to join. Membership is invitation only. There isn't a normal application process where you put your name down and wait your turn. You have to be invited, and the club is believed to have only around 300 members. So Augusta created something even more powerful than a massive initiation fee. Something you can't necessarily buy: an invitation. That's why the reported membership list has included people like Bill Gates, Warren Buffett, Condoleezza Rice, and Peyton Manning. An unbelievably small group relative to the number of people who would probably love to join. And this creates one of the strangest comparisons in golf. Shell Bay can charge 7 figures because scarcity makes access valuable. Augusta can be even harder to access because the club doesn't need to use price as its main filter at all. At Shell Bay, the question is, can you afford this? At Augusta, the question is, do we want you here? And if you're extremely wealthy, that second question can actually be harder to overcome. There's another piece of this that's easy to overlook. Imagine being famous. Every restaurant you walk into, somebody recognizes you. Every airport, every hotel, every sporting event. People want pictures, autographs, something from you. Now imagine entering a place where almost everyone around you is accustomed to being around people like that. Nobody cares. Nobody is sneaking a photo. Nobody is pitching you something on the first tee. You're just another member. For certain people, that's incredibly valuable. Shell Bay is gated. Guests have to be registered by a member, and the member has to be there before their guests arrive. The inconvenience for outsiders is part of the convenience for insiders. That's really the entire private club business model in one sentence. Make it difficult for almost everyone to enter, so the people inside never have to worry about everyone else. For generations, the most prestigious clubs relied on history. Augusta, Pine Valley, Shinnecock Hills, Winged Foot, places with names golfers had heard their entire lives. Shell Bay didn't have that advantage. When it opened in 2023, it had no century of history, no legendary Masters moments, no famous clubhouse stories passed down through generations. So instead of selling history, it sells access to something new, a brand new Greg Norman course, no tee times, a yacht club, luxury residences, tennis, spa facilities, dining, privacy, and an enormous barrier to entry. It's almost a different interpretation of what a country club can even be. And the fact that a market for this exists tells you just how strange the luxury economy surrounding modern sports has become. So what does $1 million golf membership actually get you? Technically, a golf course, practice facilities, a clubhouse, access to amenities. But nobody pays 7 figures because they desperately need somewhere to hit a 7-iron. For 99.9% of golfers, this obviously isn't worth it. $1 million could buy years of golf trips around the world, Pebble Beach, the Old Course, Ireland, incredible resorts, coaches, any equipment you wanted, and you'd probably still have money left over. But that's exactly the point. The people joining Shell Bay aren't buying the cheapest way to play great golf. They're paying for everything you can't see on the scorecard. The ability to show up without booking a tee time, to escape a crowded city, to spend an afternoon surrounded by a tiny group of people who can afford to be there, to bring a guest somewhere most people will never enter, and to know that when you walk through those gates, almost everyone else stays outside. Because once you're wealthy enough, your relationship with money changes. If you're worth $10 million, a $1 million initiation fee is enormous. If you're worth $100 million, it's still significant. If you're worth $1 billion, that $1 million fee represents just 0.1% of your net worth. And suddenly the question isn't, how could anyone spend that much on golf? It's, how much would you pay to have exactly the experience you want, whenever you want it? For some people, apparently, the answer is more than $1 million. It's not the best golf course because it costs $1 million, and spending $1 million definitely isn't going to make you a better golfer. But that's never really been the point. The most expensive luxury products in the world rarely exist because people need them. They exist because somebody wants something very few other people can have. And in South Florida, that something happens to be 18 holes of golf, no tee times, a private marina, a Greg Norman-designed course, and a gate that, when Shell Bay opened, cost $1 million just to get through.